Jimmy Lakey on the radio. I got my coffee and cream. Jimmy's on the air. Wake up and start your day. Now go and tell all the neighbors, yeah. Then crank up the radio. There's infotainment, brilliance to get you on your way. Wake up and start your day with Jimmy Lakey.
Well, here I am, my friends. Top of the morning to you. How the hell is everybody? Everybody good this morning? I'm very good. The 17th day of July, year of our Lord 2020. Well, the choir, here we go. I don't know why the choir's singing. I got my coffee and choir's singing again. Hold on. There we go. Stop it. Oh, there we go. We got it. Stop. I was ready to. We're going to have church again. Welcome to the program, everybody. I hope you're clapping. Everybody likes to hear the choir, so the choir is there, and glad to have all of you here. Does this shirt look blue to you? I think it is. It's blue. This is another blue shirt. The controversy and the saga continues as to about whether my shirts are all really blue. Some of you are doubters and naysayers. Some of you are blue shirt deniers, and I rebuke that in. Right now, I rebuke it. I am not. Don't be a blue shirt denier. This is a blue shirt. This is a black coffee mug here, and this is a blue shirt. There is a different. The lighting. Don't argue with me. Don't be a blue shirt denier. This is a blue shirt because I. For many years was sequestered by my son to only wear blue shirts. Anyway, good to have you here. 17th day of July, year of our Lord 2025, and I'm pleasured and pleased and thrilled to be here. We're going to talk about Hunter Biden claiming that Kamala and the Democrats were disloyal, and that's why they lost. The Democrats lost so handily in the 2024 election. We will talk about that this morning. A lot of great guests coming up on the program, including the author of a book called The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. That's going to give Shaz Khan coming up on the program. Our old buddy Niels Gravilius, private investigator. A lot of you like Niels, one of our newer guests. He's going to be on the program. Marley Hornick's going to talk about elections and election sanctity, and we'll even talk about some of the stuff in the state of Colorado, like with Tina Peters, locked up as a political prisoner in the Pokey right now. We'll talk about that. And our old buddy Jay Ratliff, aviation and travel expert. Jay Ratliff going to be on the show this morning. All right, there it has already started. Our Lois says, I wonder who is so obsessed with shirt colors. Listen, I showed up to two different places yesterday and said, hey, is that the shirt you wore? And I had on the same shirt that I wore on the program yesterday. And they said, I was going to argue that it was blue. It was black, but it looks blue. So people are arguing about my shirts. I go up in public and people are still talking about the things they see in the show. Obnoxious Scott says, yes, shirt is black in Laramie. Well, I'm sorry that the lighting is not, it's not black, that my shirt is not black. This is a blue shirt. It is a blue shirt Thursday. Do not be a blue shirt denier. It's not good for you. It's bad looks, and you shouldn't do that. So don't be a denier, okay? Dennis on the YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. How are you on YouTube out there? Dennis says, buenos dias, Jimmy. Well, if you're going to use the proper Spanish name of myself, it would be Buenos Dias, Jaime Lagos. Good to have you here. Rich says, morning from Missouri, raining and hot here. I got to check in with my son, see what the rain is like. He loves playing football in Missouri, loves his college he goes to, but he says those summers are blistering heat, and it's very, very, very hot there. And I remember that. I did 2 days in the Dallas area when I played high school football. So I understand, son. I understand it's a sweaty thing. RJ says, good morning from AR. That means Arkansas for those who play in the home game. So anyway, good to have all of you tuned in here. And yes, the shirt is blue this morning. Stop arguing about my shirt color. Who started this? It all started last week when I had a light blue shirt on, and even producer Chad, we also known as producer Patel, said, oh, no, the shirt is not blue, and it was blue. So anyway, it's all good to be here. All right, GOP is probing the Biden family. They're looking deep inside the Biden family and the White House to find out what the White House knew and didn't know. I find it interesting, these testimonies they're having in that House Oversight Committee. I find it interesting that, some of the questions they asked, Jill Biden had her chief of staff. She called him her work husband. They said, did you ever think that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent? I plead the Fifth Amendment. Are there some questions you don't have to plead the Fifth on? That's what I am baffled by. Why would you plead the fifth if you did? There's some of these questions. I mean, I get it. There's some things you're like a doctor-client privilege or whatever, doctor-patient privilege. I understand they're not going to answer everything, but there's some ones like the one where they said, "Did you ever have to wake the president up?" I don't remember that. I think you remember if you ever have to go and tap the president and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Biden, you got to wake up from your nappy time." There's some things that pleading the fifth or saying "I do not recall" just don't seem right. And they make you seem very suspicious. And if you look at some of these questions, they were asking Dr. Jill Biden's chief of staff, her work husband is what she called him. It's really baffling why it is that they would plead the fifth on some of these. Some of these should be quite straight yes or no answers. Did you believe that Joe Biden was competent to be the president? Just say yes. I think you can say that. And if you maybe you don't mean it's really baffling. The pleading the fifth. I think it makes the Bidens look more suspicious. I think it makes it look guilty, and I think it confirms a lot of our fears. Okay, Jimmy, saying your shirt is blue is like someone saying 2 + 2 = 5. All right, RJ is banned from the chat room for that sarcasm. That is not proper sarcasm. It is a blue shirt. I will put my hand on the Holy Bible and say it is a blue shirt. Now, just because the lighting here in the studio or your camera doesn't pick up all the nuances of the fine colorations that I bring to my wardrobe doesn't mean it's not true. It is true that this is a blue shirt. It is only a blue shirt. We have made the Rivers Promise logo shirts in blue, in black, and we made some light blue as well. We also have some white ones. I don't like the white ones because I feel they're see-through and people can see things under the shirt, and it causes people to stumble in their walk with the Lord. So I have a white one, but I don't wear it. I have a black one as well, but that's up in the closet. And honestly, I'm going to be honest with you because it's just us girls here. Just us girls. I don't fit in the black one anymore. I have the large, the black one's a size smaller, and I used to fit in it, and that's why we're on a diet. We're on a diet. All right, what else we have? We have the Senate passing some Doge cuts yesterday. Anybody see that? The Senate passed some Doge cuts. They started off with like 14 million or 12 billion or $1 billion, I should say, of unspent funds. They're not cutting anything that was that has already been spent or any program that exists. So this is funds that have not been. They rescinded it, and 2 Republicans voted against it. One said that she wasn't really sure what was in the bill, and the other said she didn't like their attitude. They don't like your attitude. 2 women voted against budget cuts and spending. They actually said, "Could we just coupon? Could we just go find the sale and buy it cheaper? We're still going to spend the money. We'll just spend it on less." So anyway, the 2 women, Murkowski and Collins, I believe, are the 2 lady folks that did not want to trim the budget. And all of you men out there said, "I'm not surprised," right? That's what you all said. Stacy jumps in. Stacy jumps in and says, "We're trying to believe you on the color. We're trying to believe you. Just believe me. You don't have to try. You can make a choice in your life to believe me. This is a blue shirt." I mean, if you want to pay admission for a studio audience here at the House of Lakey, and the Studio A is what this is, Studio B is back behind me. If you'd like to come to, we'll let you come in and you can see firsthand that the shirt is a blue shirt. But we charge high dollar for the studio audience. I'm just letting you know. All right, so the Doge cuts have passed. There's a rescission bill. There's going to be one of the ladies said they didn't like the rescission bill because they said didn't like the look of it. I think that's what Susan Collins said. Didn't like the look of a rescission bill right on the edge of a reconciliation bill. Well, I don't know what order she expected that to happen, but she was not happy about that. There's also a story out there about Adam Schiff, a criminal referral, mortgage fraud. We briefly touched about that. I will get to that in the program. And here's something that's also in the news. We'll get to this as well throughout the course of the morning, and I'm sure for the course of the next several days, is that Jeffrey Epstein's story will not die. Jeffrey Epstein might have hung himself, but this story, President Trump would really wish this story would go away, but it ain't going away. President Trump has now resorted to, at first he shamed the reporter and said, "I dare you, I can't believe you brought this up in front of this cabinet meeting. There's so many other glorious and big things that we should be talking about." And now yesterday he decided to shame the followers and said they have been hoaxed. They've been duped by the Democrats. And I was watching Peter Doocy on the White House lawn early this morning. And Peter Doocy said that the president is probably a little bit perturbed that this story will not go away. He says there was no coordination in the original messaging with Pam Bondi, and that's where this thing got out of hand, where Pam Bondi went from it's on my desk to, oh, it doesn't exist, gaslighting. And the controversy is not going to stop. And I hate to say it. I was sitting with some folks last night, producer Chad and I were, and one of the first topics of conversation that just randomly comes up, if you go out to see your friends or family, do politics come up firsthand? For some reason, people want to talk politics all the time. And I'm not a big politic talker in public. I do it professionally, so I don't have to worry about it. But that was the first thing that came up. Hey, Jimmy, how are you? What do you think about Epstein? That's kind of how it went. That's how it goes. And everybody's got an opinion on this Epstein file. And a lot of folks are disappointed in President Trump. And we had all sorts of hypotheses going last night as to why the Trump administration is handling this. We know there's a file. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell is in the pokey right now because she trafficked people. So they have to know that she was trafficking. They had to know there's a list. Anyway, we're not buying it. A lot of folks are not buying it. And President Trump has gone from shaming the reporter to basically saying a bunch of crackheads out there that are MAGA people, and even called them former MAGA people and said that they're being hoaxed by the Democrats. Anybody believe that? He said this is like the Russia hoax, and yet I don't see the parallel. I think that's kind of a far stretch to kind of compare this, because we have people that are actually in jail right now and or persona non grata from the royal family. We have actual criminal charges in the thing here that he's calling a hoax. So there's no hoax about this. It's just, what do we know and who all was involved? He had clients. She had clients. They were trafficking. That's all we're asking for. To say that this is a hoax is a little bit out there, and I don't think it is appropriate. But anyway, President Trump desperately wants this story to go away, and I hate to break the news to you, Mr. President. I don't think it's going away. You campaigned on it. You said it was a big deal. Your campaign said it was a big deal. This is a reflection. This is an emulation of what we believe is the corruption in Washington, D.C., in which very powerful people seem to get by with a lot of crap that the average folks on the street just don't get by with. So we'll talk more about that throughout the course of the morning. All right, we're going to go to my first guest. We're going to talk about the ultimate vaccine timeline, a fact-packed history. It's a book that's been written by Shaz Khan. Vaccines and their makers. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Anybody don't remember the movie back in the 80s, 90s, I think late 80s, Indecent Proposal, where they offered a person $1 million to have illicit and let's say conjugal relationships outside of the confines of their existing marital and or committed relationship. Well, they've asked a survey about what $1 million can buy. Can money buy love? What if money doesn't buy love, but it gives you some money? They asked some survey questions. A new poll shows that people would leave their partner. They asked them, would you leave your partner for $1 million? Would you leave your partner for $1 million? You might be surprised at the results. Surprisingly, 43% of Americans said, yep, I'm out of here. 43% of Americans said, yep, $1 million, write the check, I'll deposit it today, and I'm out of here. 43% of Americans said they would leave their partner for $1 million. Maybe 43% of couples were going apart anyway. Maybe they had bad, the values are gone, but 43% of Americans, that's 43 out of every 100, said, yep, you give me $1 million, I'm leaving. And producer Chad and I were talking about this in a pre-show meeting, and I get to my guest here. I said, no, not for $1 million. Now, I'm proudly a very proud single father, so I don't have to worry about this, but I'm thinking $1 million. I'm thinking $1 million. I'm only going to get half of that, because if I leave, they're going to come after the other half and get at least half of it. So, you get up to $2 to $3 million. Adios, sayonara. I may be out of there, but $1 million, I'm not so sure. 43% though. If you people in the chat room, on the YouTube, on the Rumble, on all the Facebook feeds we're on right now, by the end of the day, the end of this week, thousands of people will have this show hit their ear holes or their eye holes. And when it does, they're going to be saying, yeah, I'd do that for $1 million. Would you do that for $1 million? 43% of Americans say they would. So that means 43 out of every 100 people that listen to this show would also, if you're average, say that you would leave your spouse and or your partner for $1 million. So that may be a question of the day. Would you? Now let me suggest, if you're going to answer this question of the day in the chat room, don't answer it if your spouse is watching, or maybe do. Maybe it kind of could be a shot across the bow. Give me $1 million. I'm out of here, babes. That's what you do. Anyway, that's a question. I'm not sure anybody's going to answer it, but would you leave your spouse? Would you leave your partner for $1 million? 43% of Americans said they would. RJ, Stacy, Dennis, the question, you guys are, I know you're out there, you're in the chat room. Arloa, don't be afraid here. Those of you that, I'm thinking those of you that think this is a black shirt, not a blue shirt, probably would be out of there for $250,000. But nevertheless, good to have you here. All right, let's go to my first guest of the morning. It's Lakey Unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. If you're listening on the podcast version later in the day, as I said, thousands of ears and eyes will see and or hear this show by the time we get it loaded up on all the platforms. Those of you watching live, we appreciate you doing so. If you want to listen to the podcast version later or pass it on to a friend, it's going to be on the Spotify. It's going to be the iHeart. It's going to be on all the places podcasts are found. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. And some of you watching the streamcast, thank you very much. Unleashed from the confines of corporate radio, I get to talk about great topics such as Big Pharma. Told some friends last night that I think it's very important that we understand what we're dealing with, the lies we've been told about so many things, and we've been told that things are safe. We've been told that there are great we've been told that about COVID and all sorts of other topics. I want to bring into the program author and researcher Shaz Khan is in the studio now, and let me just give you a quick bio. The author of The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. Please welcome Shaz Khan into the studio. Shaz, welcome in.
Hi, Jimmy. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's dive in here. Let's just dive right to the title of the book, The Ultimate Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. One of the reasons you put out a book that says it's going to have the facts is because a lot of folks don't know the facts about the vaxes and their makers. So let's just kind of dive in there. You thought that there was some information that needed to be told to people, and you decided to tell it. Talk about the fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. What did people not know that you thought they needed to know?
Thank you so much for giving me your time. Well, there's not that many books on the history of vaccines, to be honest. I mean, there's Dissolving Illusions by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys and Roman Bystrionic. So when I was doing my research initially about 10 years ago, that was pretty much the only book I could find. So I spent much of my time in libraries, in national archives, digging through government documents and official old medical journals. And I was shocked to discover that a lot of information has been withheld from the public, especially the amount of vaccines we already had available in the early 20th century. We had vaccines against acne, against hay fever, against influenza already at the time, but it was a bacterial base. They didn't actually understand influenza was a virus at that time. And coming across some of this documentation just really made my jaw drop. And I thought, hang on a minute, I think people need to see this. It needs to be put in a publication that people can consult easily and refer to. And that's basically the motivation why I decided to put all the information in the book.
Yeah. We have several times I've interviewed Dr. Robert Malone. He's one of the guys that invented the mRNA technology, and he was very much opposed to the COVID vaccine being used as mRNA. He said he never created that technology for that. Talk about the evolution of the early inoculations, the early vaxes, and now this cutting-edge mRNA platform, which the creator says he's not real comfortable with those being vaxes.
Well, they're not really vaccines. They're experimental gene therapies. It's just a bit of semantics. They're changing definitions. But vaccines, obviously, for those who don't know, they've been around for over 200 years. The first type of vaccine that we were using, we didn't actually call it vaccine back then. It was variolation, which is basically taking either, we had a smallpox scab. You could ground up the scab and you would either blow it up the nose, or they would put like a little bit of it on a superficial skin wound so that it could kind of get to your bloodstream that way. That was then replaced by what Jenner invented, which was his cowpox vaccination against smallpox, which again still did use a superficial wound. There wasn't a syringe back in those days. Syringes came on later, I'd say the late 19th century and then earlier 20th century, more in a mass produced method. And that was used basically for, we used that vaccine for, I think, like over 170 years. Yeah. And then we came to Louis Pasteur, so the French chemist who developed the rabies vaccine, which we famously was made out of nervous spinal tissue. Again, the syringe was used at that point, but it wasn't a really mass-produced method, if you will. Then we came up with toxoid vaccines, which were using bacterial toxins which had been inactivated. So the first being diphtheria and tetanus. And that's when the first adjuvants came into play, which was aluminum based, basically. And quite quickly from there, we started developing whooping cough vaccines already in the early 20th century. There was already a whooping cough vaccine on the market in 1914 in the US, made by several manufacturers. And again, we're talking, they called them virus-based and bacterial-based, but at the time we only really knew anything about bacteria, so they were bacterial-based. There were other vaccines on the market, as I said. There were vaccines against hay fever, against acne, against pneumococcal disease. The way that they were manufactured is quite, it's not very easy to find out exactly the process because there's little documentation that still exists on that. But if I fast forward then to probably the most famous vaccine that everyone knows about is the polio vaccine. So an inactivated viral vaccine. This was the point that we understood viruses better. We were using cell culture methods to develop and propagate viruses, which is necessary for virus vaccines. Then we came up with measles, mumps, rubella. They were quickly combined. Then there was also DTP, in the 1940s was combined as well. So diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, which is whooping cough. Whooping cough has never really been available alone since that time because it was a highly reactogenic vaccine already back in the days. And for whatever reason, they decided to combine it with diphtheria and tetanus. So then fast forward to the 1970s, where you have the biotech explosion and genetic engineering comes into play. That obviously changes the whole game for vaccine manufacturers in the sense that they could start patenting certain organisms that are part of vaccines, the first of which was hepatitis B, which was a genetically engineered vaccine that came out in 1986. And then very quickly after that, we know the rest of the story, that the amount of vaccines mandated for kids tripled at that time, and the number of vaccines in general doubled. And then coming to today, where we have now our COVID vaccine, which is an mRNA-based, so genetic vaccine, doesn't work in the same way the previous traditional vaccines work, hence why it's not really a vaccine, it's an experimental gene therapy, because it actually goes into your body, targets your cell, and basically gets your cell to produce the antigen, which in previous cases, you basically had the antigen in the syringe and you're getting that injected into your body. But this is not the case anymore with mRNA technology. And this is where we're at today. They want to use this technology for other vaccines, notably flu. Yeah. They're looking into it for other viral vaccines as well, because it's much cheaper to produce and it's much easier to just change the strain. So say, for instance, what we've seen with COVID, when the strains evolve and they have different genetic codes, they just go into the bioinformatic computer application and they'll change the little code and then they can generate a new vaccine from that. So there's not much living material in these vaccines anymore, which they argue is safer because a lot of the living materials is what could contaminate vaccines and create problems. But the problem is mRNA vaccines have not been proven safe and effective, and yet we're fast forwarding with other vaccines to be manufactured on the same platform. And as Robert Malone said to yourself, even though he got, I think, 3 doses or 2 doses of the vaccine himself, he believed that they'd fixed some of the problems that were in mRNA vaccines when he was developing them, and then found out later that that was actually not the case.
The voice of Shaz Khan. The name of the book is called The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. Shaz, help me if it seems as if growing up, those of us, I'm a Gen Xer, we just got vaccines. You got a couple here. You had to get a tetanus shot occasionally, and it was no big deal. And then I started, as my niece and nephew became of age, and then as I became a parent, and I saw what they wanted to put in my son, there was just an explosion of what was on the chart that you had to get. It was no longer just the MMR. It was no longer just the polio. It exploded. What caused? Was it scientific research that caused that explosion of these mandated and or highly suggested vaccines? Was it that we decided to give exemptions to the pharmaceutical companies and therefore they could just kind of produce these out quicker? Why did it change? And let's say my generation, that we just got, maybe 5, 6, 7 vaccines throughout the course of the day, and now it's dozens and dozens of cocktails of vaccines. What brought that explosion on?
Well, an important part of legislation, an important part of that story is the legislation that happened in 1986 with the Childhood Vaccine Injury Act in the US. It basically gave liability to the pharma manufacturers for vaccines. So it's no longer the pharmaceutical companies who have to pay for injuries or any lawsuits that are against them, because they actually almost went out of business because of all the lawsuits they were having, particularly after the DTaP vaccine. So that changed it because the pharmaceutical companies no longer had any financial risk to develop and put vaccines on the market, there was also the biotech industry, as I said before. The fact that they were able to patent certain organisms made the profit motive much more interesting, because in the days of polio vaccine, when it first came out, there was not much profit motive in vaccines. There wasn't much money to be made. But between 1983 and 2005, the number of vaccines doubled and the number of vaccine mandates tripled, as we said. And I think also an important part of legislation in the US is the 1980 Bayh-Dole Act, which basically made that public funds, so taxpayer money, could be used by universities or researchers to actually profit and get royalties from inventions that they made using that public money. And we had the typical example of hepatitis B, which was a collaboration between several universities. They were able to patent that. Gardasil is another example, which was a work of several universities, and Merck, of course. And let's just say the pricing as well, the fact that they were allowed to charge a lot more was an incentive to just come out with more, products. There were obviously certain diseases that I think they generally wanted to help tackle. Could it be Hib, hepatitis B included? But what's interesting about hepatitis B is it used to be called serum hepatitis because it was recognized after vaccination. And then the name was changed and it became hepatitis B. And we no longer talked about the fact that vaccines could create hepatitis. So that was nicely forgotten.
The name of the book is called The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. I want people to get a copy of the book. I think it's a fascinating. I started researching vaccines in my limited and non-clinical way after my son had a reaction when one of his first vaccines, as he was adopted coming, and they gave him a shot. I didn't know what it was. I was, oh, yeah. And after that, I started to do research and became much more skeptical in this world. And so I feel like I know enough to be dangerous, but the timeline and the actual history of it are really fascinating in this book. I don't want to give the end of the book away, but it doesn't sound like this book has been written you're just trying to give the facts. People can draw their own conclusion. You're not in this saying whether or not you should do something or shouldn't do something, or is there some opinion given at the end?
There is a short opinion shared in the afterword, but again, the whole point was to be as neutral as possible, to just present the facts and let people make their own assessment. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not giving people any medical advice, but I think it's necessary that people have the information and the context to make this decision for themselves or for their children, because obviously health is your most important asset. And without it, the rest of life doesn't really have the same quality. So I think it's important that people realize that, it is neutral. But again, I think anybody who goes through it will realize that, well. Yeah.
Let me just say, I did some research, and there were some exemptions and waivers I had to sign for my son to attend school because I did the research on my own and said, I'm not real comfortable with that. I'll leave it at that. The name of the book is called The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, a fact-packed history of vaccines and their makers. Shaz Khan is the author. Shaz, if someone wants to follow you and or get a copy of the book, where do they go?
So you can get a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. You can also order it in for your local bookstore, and I'm all for encouraging local bookstores. You can also find the website, which is theultimatevaccinetimeline.com, which will go live on the 4th of August, which will have complimentary information. And I'm also starting a Substack, so that's indieresearcher.substack.com. So INDIE researcher.substack.com. Thank you.
The Ultimate Vaccine Timeline, that's the name of the book. I appreciate you hopping on here. Well, we'll have you back on. I think this fascinating discussion. And let me just say my life was revolutionized when I finally figured out the whole game that what they were trying to stick in my son, what they did put in my son, the reactions he had. And I said, I had to do some research, and I found some very interesting things. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of people who find interesting things, let's bring up my next guest in the program. His name is Nils Gravilius, private investigator based in Los Angeles, and he's awake on the left coast this morning. I'm sure he has found some very interesting things in his PI career. That's Marley. Let me bring Marley up next. Marley, you're up next. Nils, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
Well, I'm fantastic, Mr. Lakey. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Great to have you back on the program. I got a lot of topics of conversation. I want to jump in here. First of all, I want to ask you, the House and the Senate are doing some investigation about whether the auto pen was working or whether Joe Biden was competent as the president. They're really looking at this House Oversight Committee. When you watch these oversight committees and these congressional hearings where they say they're investigating something, you have to laugh at some of this stuff going, that's not what they're not asking the questions or looking at the things like a real private investigator, are they?
No, I don't think they are. They're being theatrical largely, but we pay them to do this. I wish that they would be more effective in their legislation, but I do want them to exercise authentic oversight. Sometimes the theatrics are fantastic. I mean, there's some real stars in the Senate and Congress. I mean, John Kennedy, the senator from Louisiana, is absolutely irreplaceable. For that, I don't know how great a senator he is, but he's really good at roasting them, Mr. Lakey. Don't you like it? I like that.
I like it. I like it a lot. Now, let me ask you. Supposedly, all these years, Mr. Gavilius, we have been told that Jeffrey Epstein was a child trafficking guy, child pornographer. And a matter of fact, he was being charged with trafficking. His associate, Giselle Maxwell, is in jail because of trafficking. And now all of a sudden, the Justice Department has come out and said, oh, we don't have a list anywhere. Well, if you don't have a list or know who they were trafficking to, why is Prince Andrew persona non grata in the royal family? And what was Giselle Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever her name is, why is she in jail right now if there's no list and there's no evidence of trafficking or people on the list? How do you know who this lady trafficked to? Give me your thoughts of the declaration that suddenly we have no Epstein list.
Well, Mr. Lakey, I'll be frank with you. It looks an awful lot like an intelligence operation to me. And the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is still alive suggests that she was the case officer and Jeffrey Epstein was merely the facilitator. He was replaceable and she wasn't. Now, if you look at Ghislaine Maxwell's background, her father, Robert Maxwell, is kind of a mysterious character, Mr. Lakey. He fled Czechia in the 1930s and goes to England, and then he works in the British military during World War II. But if you look at his profile as a businessman, soldier, etc., he sure looks an awful lot like MI6 to me. So what if MI6 was running a honey trap down there at Pitcairn Island or whatever this place in the Bahamas that Epstein was facilitating? And it was operated to lure the right kind of people in to be played by an intelligence agency. And then once Prince Andrew blundered into it, they had to shut it down because they can't afford to embarrass the royals.
It's fascinating. So the theory then would be that this was an intelligence operation, maybe MI6, whoever was running it, and they would lure people in there. And was the lure in there just to give them sexual gratification, or was it to have evidence on them to say, we know you enjoyed that, and by the way, we have video, you better operate the way we want? Was it a blackmail operation?
It may have been a blackmail operation, but it might not have been Ghislaine and Jeffrey doing the blackmail. It might have been other parties who have yet to be identified. Now, you'll notice our Justice Department is being remarkably closed-mouthed. In February, when Ms. Bondi was making statements about releasing everything, she ordered the head of Southern District New York FBI to hand over every single thing from the file, and I believe she was demanding that. And the next day, he resigned. That was James Dennehy, Special Agent FBI. Now, he didn't resign the case. He didn't resign the office. He resigned from the FBI, Jimmy. Now, let's look at Mr. Dennehy's background within the Bureau just very quickly. He didn't specialize in child sex trafficking. He didn't specialize in mafia investigations. He didn't pull apart bank robbery gangs. Mr. Dennehy was a counterintelligence man, Mr. Lakey.
Wow. So the White House, the president had run on this. He mentioned it in his campaign that we should release the list. And a lot of folks see it as draining the swamp because a lot of these elites have done things that the average folks would not be allowed to do. And even Pam Bondi says, I have it on my desk. She says, well, I didn't mean the list. I had other stuff on my desk. Why do you think the sudden change of heart from the White House and or the Justice Department. Why all of a sudden are we, I think, being gaslit? Say we have the list. Oh, never mind. There's nothing to see here. We close. They didn't just say there's no list. They closed the case and declared it it's final. It's done. Why would the U.S. government or the Justice Department seemingly turn on a dime, sir?
I don't think they're done with it. I think they're just making statements that they're done with it. And I think that more will eventually out on this. I don't think it's over at all, Mr. Lakey.
So who's going to reopen this? You think the Justice Department is still looking, maybe a special prosecutor? I mean, if you wanted to get to the bottom of it as a private investigator, what would you advise them to do?
I would be impaneling a grand jury and putting every single prosecutor and FBI agent up on the stand, and then the victims and any employees that can be identified of Maxwell and Epstein. But I don't think it's closed. I think they're just making a public statement to that effect. I think they're still working this thing.
Wow. Fascinating. I still can't figure out why they would say they've closed it if they haven't, unless they're trying to deceive people, make people think that they're not being surveilled anymore. I mean, if you're going to work it, why not come out and avoid the political backlash and say, hey, we're still working this thing. We're going to impanel a grand jury. Why not just say that's what you're going to do, as opposed to saying nothing to see here? What's the strategy, do you think?
Well, I think that Donald Trump and the people around him have done a very good job of changing gears when they want to change gears to change the narrative. But nothing is really ever closed. There is no closure in anything. And I trust President Trump to get things done. I don't allow things like this to distract me. When he's disappointed me, I have registered my disappointment appropriately. But I think there's much more to this than is readily apparent, and I'll be patient. I'm a very patient man, Mr. Lakey.
Nils Gravilius, the voice you hear. Nils, there's another list that was out there. We thought we may get in a trial. We never did. I haven't talked to you since it was the Diddy list. Who was at these Diddy freak-offs? Who was slathering on the baby oil, doing unthinkable things with people maybe they should have been doing unthinkable things where I thought we were going to get a lot more, I guess, tabloid tantalization out of that trial. We didn't really get a lot of bombs dropped on us at that thing. And Diddy got found not guilty of some of this most serious charges. Give me your thoughts on this. Was this a over prosecution? Was this a bad prosecution? How is it that they let all this hype up about Diddy and some of the most severe accusations he was found not guilty of?
Well, okay, so I think they did a very poor job. You'll notice that James Comey's daughter, Maureen Comey, was working that particular prosecution, and she's out of a job now. They overcharged the man clearly with the federal RICO, that sort of thing. He should have been charged, if anything, with the state court charges. People like this like to have freak-offs, and I promise you that there are social influencers setting up freak-off parties this weekend, Mr. Lakey, and Mr. Diddy will get all sorts of social cred for how dynamic. So his parties are so dangerous that even the federal government comes after me. You want to come to my party? Come on over. We're going to have some interesting people over. Just wear a raincoat or something like that. This is a class of people who like mud. They're in the same way that hogs like mud, Mr. Lakey. They're going to wallow around in it and throw mud on each other. It's going to smell bad at the end of it. And you know, it's weather. It isn't news. It happens over and over again.
The voice of Nils Gravilius, Los Angeles-based private investigator. Do you see any? Some people think that they thought that maybe some people that were on the Diddy list, from the Epstein list, there was some underage child trafficking going on. That was the accusation. Is that, as you said, not necessarily news? That's just tabloid hyperbole. I mean, do you think these nefarious things that have been accused of both Diddy and the Epstein list of underage behavior, would you be shocked if you found out that was all just hyperbole, or do you think, now that really happens?
I think it's a mix of hyperbole and reality. I have no doubt that Mr. Epstein had underage girls at Pitcairn Island, and I have no doubt that Mr. Diddy did whatever Diddy likes to do when he's diddying. Of course. I mean, what kind of a party would it be if they didn't have a couple of 16-year-old runaway waifs, Czechoslovakian underwear models over there to behave badly with Mr. Diddy and his idiot friends?
Yeah. If somebody ever hired Neil Scrivilius as a famed Los Angeles-based private detective, private investigator, could someone find out if their spouse went to one of these Diddy freak-offs? I mean, if you wanted to find out if you suspected your parent was your spouse was on the Epstein list, is this the kind of things that people hire a private investigator to look into?
Oh, I'm sure that a private detective could look into it. Conducting surveillance after the fact is often quite difficult. And then could you rely entirely on the statements of men and women who would hang around with a character like Mr. Diddy? I don't think so. But it could be done. If somebody wanted to throw enough money at a bad situation like that, you could peel it apart, get statements from people who were there, things like that. Check the travel and credit card history of the loving errant spouse. But typically, people can't buy enough bad news, is what I will tell you, Mr. Lakey. One of the reasons I steer clear from matrimonial investigations is they want some sort of an emotional victory, and it is Pyrrhic at best, and immediately flees the scene. I can't tell you the number of times I've had people come to me after perfect evidence was presented that their wife or husband was being unfaithful to them, including explicit footage, and they come back later and want a refund, partial or in full, because they didn't enjoy the emotional experience of what it is that they learned.
Wow. You have a website out there. You've written a couple of books as well, back in published in 2013, Skullduggery and Sub Rosa. Tell us about your website, your Facebook, your presence on the X as well, if folks want to learn more about Nils Gravilius.
I'm at Detective Nils on X, formerly Twitter. I have a new book coming out in June of 26, The Last Lawman, which is my professional memoir. The books already for sale on Amazon are novels. They are novelizations of real events or real people. But the true to life, true crime memoir of myself will be for sale, published by Post Hill Press in June of 2026, Mr. Lakey. And I'm really looking forward to that. I want to be on your show again. You're an interesting man, Mr. Lakey, and you ask relevant, probing questions.
I do that. I'm not. I was going to make a sophomoric joke about probing, but I'm not going to do that in light of the current conversation. I'm not going to do that. So, Nils Gravilius, if folks want to find you on the web, where do they go, sir?
GraveliusPI.com. I'm always standing by like a mean dog on a weak leash to handle bad situations.
GraveliusPI.com. And he's very serious. He handles bad situations. Last week, he canceled on me. His people canceled because someone's life was in danger and he had to go solve a crime.
Yes, I was looking for an endangered elder, and that case is resolved to her protection.
GraveliusPI.com. Mr. Gravilius, appreciate you hopping on. We'll have you back on often. I appreciate you as always. Thanks for jumping in there. And he says, hey, don't worry, all of you people that are bothered about the Epstein files, never fear. He thinks you're still working on this thing, and it's not over till it's over. The fat lady has not sung when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. Hold tight. That's an interesting take. Ladies and gentlemen, before I bring in my next guest, scheduled for 1 minute and 40 seconds ago, I want to remind you that we need 30 people, and we're almost halfway there, not quite. We need 30 people that would give a one-time donation, charitable donation to Rivers Promise, the charity that's pictured over both of my shoulders, I should say, and behind both of my ears. Rivers Promise. We're building our Legacy Christian Academy in Rwanda through my charity, Rivers Promise. You want to know the history of Rivers Promise, why I started it, feel free. It's on the website, riverspromise.com or riverspromise.org. But I do need 30 people to donate $175 one time. And as every year we add a new class or a grade level to Legacy Christian Academy. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we're launching our 5th grade class, and that will be one step shy of completing our primary school campus, which will be kindergarten through 6th grade. And we've got to launch our 5th grade campus. Very poor people. They don't private school area would never really had a school. Nobody went to school. We're educating people in a very poor part of Rwanda, but it's 175 provides desk and chair. We got to have these custom built. There's no desk store in Rwanda. Local craftsmen will build the desk for us. It also stocks the classroom for 30 kids. Help us do that. I know a lot of you maybe got paid this week. Would you say a quick prayer and ask the big guy upstairs, ask the Lord Jesus if he's going to help, encourage you to give. If he doesn't, he doesn't. You don't feel that tingle in your heart or the obligation, that's okay. There is no condemnation if you don't give. But those of you who can give $175, I would appreciate it. We would really greatly appreciate it. I'd like to have it all done by tomorrow. Right now, we're not tracking as if we're going to get there, but you can help us. $175 if I could get 30 people. We got a dozen or so folks that have participated and a dozen or so desks, but we need to finish over the top. So if you can help us, we would appreciate it. Go right now, riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org, and just make that donation. $175. We need 30 people to do it, and that will again build the desk, build the chair that'll stock the classroom, and we'll have a bunch of fifth graders that normally, I said yesterday, when their kids go to our school, they're saving them from being a street kid. I mean, there's the alternative. Young ladies will not become prostitutes because they go to fifth grade. Young ladies will, because they go to our school, they do not have to prostitute themselves out. I can't tell you how many letters I've written to sponsors, read to sponsors or sent to sponsors from kids of young ladies thanking their sponsor. Thank you for keeping me in school. Thank you for there, because all of my friends who didn't get to go to school, they were having to prostitute themselves out just to eat food. In our school, we feed them 2 meals a day. So building a desk is not just building a desk. It's not just an act of construction. It literally is an act of stopping very horrific situations for small children in Rwanda, and you can help us do that. Keep them in our school. Riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com, doesn't matter. Donate $175. I need 30 people to do it, and I don't mean to... I'm very serious when I talk about these young ladies, especially. And the boys end up in petty theft. The boys end up in lives of crime and begging, and it's bad. We keep them off the streets, and prostitution ends up happening, and we don't want that at all. So help us keep these kids in school. $175, 30 people to do it, one-time donation. I appreciate you doing it. All right, waiting patiently, originally set for 8:30. I'm not sure if Brian Maloney, who helped me schedule this, informed that, hey, it was going to be 8:45, but hey, we'll blame it on Brian if she's been waiting unexpectedly. Marley Hornick joined us last week on the program, CEO of UnitedForFreedom.com. We had to cut that time short because of a connection issue, but now we have all the time in the world. Marley, welcome back to the program.
Thanks so much, Jimmy. It's really good to be with you again, and no big deal. We don't have to blame Brian. I'm just glad we're talking.
I no, give me reason to blame Brian, please. I like to blame Brian if I can at all. Marty, let's jump in here for people who don't recall our conversation. It was a short conversation. UniteForFreedom.com. Help us understand the mission of UniteForFreedom.com.
Our mission is very simple. We audit official election records across the United States. We identify areas in those records where clearly federal law is being ignored or perhaps deliberately subverted. We report these to election officials. We report it to the DOJ and the FBI, and we file lawsuits. We have a massive volunteer advocacy program, and we are demanding from sea to shining sea that our election laws be followed so that every American can actually trust elections.
Let's dive into the trusting of elections. After the 2020 election, President Trump and a lot of his supporters, including myself, questioned some of the shenanigans that might have happened, the record numbers. Did that many people really vote for Joe Biden, even more than voted for Barack Obama? It made no sense. But if you questioned that, you were considered a conspiracy theorist. You were called an election denier. Let's go back to that 2020. Obviously, there's probably some people that were hyperbolic in what they said actually occurred. So we had to make this election too big to rig. I get that. What do we know really happened in certain areas in 2020? How much election stealing was there that actually happened now that we've had over 4 years to process it?
That's an interesting question, because the way that Unite for Freedom looks at these problems is not to say whether or not there was theft. It's to say whether or not the actual returns as reported are legitimate. Are they actually conclusive? Because if they're inconclusive for any reason, then election officials are statutorily barred from actually certifying. Now, you could say, okay, statutorily barred, is it really the law that they can't certify an invalid election? Yes, because this third sentence of the United States Constitution says that it is the people of the several states who choose their representatives. So if an election official oversteps their authority and signs off on a false certification, they are choosing the representatives. Regarding 2020, what I can tell you right now about the 2020 election, for example, in the state of New York, is that 338,000 more votes were counted than the state has any record of voters who voted. So basically, a pallet full of ballots entered the system. No one has any idea where they came from. They don't track back to any voter, but they were counted equally to qualified citizen voters of New York State. This is a huge problem, not only because the election is invalid, legally invalid, but because when that's repeated in 2022 and Letitia James is elected to office and Kathy Hochul are elected to office, and the error rate in their elections is double their margins of victory, according to the state records, we have a crisis, a constitutional crisis, because they are wreaking havoc on our laws and our moral systems in the United States of America, and they are doing so under color of law. Nobody knows if they won. That's what the records show, actually. It's like if you turned in your taxes and you said, well, I kind of think this is more or less what I have in my bank accounts, and I kind of think this is more or less what I spent on accounting and business and my transactions, and this is basically what I got in for revenue. So, here you go. It's about 86% accurate.
Well, so basically, you just simply looking at the facts, not the opinion, not whether you supported Trump or the blue team or the red team. You look at the facts and say there were more ballots cast by a large number than there are actually potential or registered legal voters. And everybody ought to say, well, hold on, before we certify this, let's figure out where these ballots came from. And what you're saying is the evidence is there, but nobody wanted to pause and say, we don't know where this came from.
Yeah, of course not. They just go on the warpath. That organization that did that forensic work, I'm the executive director of that organization as well, New York Citizens Audit, and they came on the warpath and opened an 18-month criminal investigation into citizens attempting to verify their votes and reporting massive irregularities in reported election and certified election returns to the officials and asking for, answers, basically. So that's what they do, and I just want to clarify, it's not registered voters. They literally counted more votes than they report voters who voted. So every state has the voter roll, right? The list of qualified registered voters according to state and federal law only. That's only who's allowed in that list. And then they have the voter history, which is a separate record in many states that says exactly who voted. So they say, well, this group of people voted and this number of votes were counted, but they don't reconcile. So where the heck did all those other ballots come from? 338,000 votes?
Yeah,
we're supposed to trust that. So yeah, just like you said, this has nothing to do with, sure, there's a lot of things to be suspicious about. And there is hard evidence from 2020 that was the investigations were all dropped regarding a lot of issues. There's the truckload of ballots from Bethpage, New York. There's the Connick issue. There's a lot of issues that were dropped, right? Oh no, we're not going to look into that because we might find something. But this is just simple. Election officials are required to administer a process on behalf of the citizens of the United States of America, a process that allows the citizens to choose their representatives as codified in our Constitution, sentence number 3. And in that process, they can only register authentic voters. They can only count authentic ballots. They can only count the same number of votes as voters who participated. And they have to be able to prove it to us. And across this country, everywhere we look, the state officials are completely failing to do this, including Colorado, your state. Yeah. And That's why we're filing again. We have a new motion coming in our existing litigation against the state of Colorado, against Jenna Griswold and against the Attorney General, accusing them of certifying election results without regard for accuracy or legal compliance.
Well, let's dive into that, the Colorado story. Of course, people watch all over the nation, but I'm based in Colorado, and a lot of our listener base is because of my years in radio here. What do you know about Colorado? I want to get to the Tina Peters matter here in just a moment, but what do we know on the numbers? Do we have those knowledgeable? What did Jenna Griswold certify that probably she should have paused and reflected, not certified?
There's a couple of major red flags in the election returns as reported in her official records. There's almost 45,000 votes counted from people who weren't registered at the time of the election. They apparently registered to vote after the election. So that's a big red flag. Is it possible that a couple people showed up on voting day, on election day, got a ballot, registered through the system, and then somehow, that piece of paper got misfiled and later, but 45,000 times? That is actually incompetence to the level that the Supreme Court has ruled is criminal. So it's unacceptable because that could impact multiple federal and state races in terms of the sheer number of votes involved. When you have a race that has, like a 50, like a near 50-50 margin, 49.7 to 51.3 or whatever, you can't certify that when you have all those errors in the system. Are they errors or are they fraud? And nobody knows. Nobody cares. Another thing she really messed up was that she didn't appear to notice that she counted 34,000 more voters who voted than she counted ballots. So did 34,000 people get disenfranchised in her system? Is she that incompetent? We talk about, hey, a handful of people weren't able to vote because they don't have voter ID or whatever. Well, but 34,000 people did vote, but those votes weren't counted. And nobody knows whose ballots they were, to be clear. It's just that the election results don't reconcile. So it could have been your vote. It could have been somebody, we have no idea whose vote was dumped in the garbage or what did happen. Yeah. And they just say, oh, nothing happened. We can just look at that number and we have these special eyes. We can just tell just by looking at it, Jimmy, how legitimate that was.
Marley Hornick is my guest. She's the CEO of UniteForFreedom.com. I say that because some of you are not watching the show live. You're listening to it on the podcast later in the day on the Apple podcast or this iHeart podcast or the Spotify podcast platform. Again, UniteForFreedom.com. Marley Hornick is my guest. I need more coffee in my system at this time of the day. But she's my guest, and that's the voice that you do hear. Let's dive into this Tina Peters issue. Those of the outside of the state of Colorado may not be familiar with Tina Peters, but she was a county clerk up in the mountainous areas outside of the Denver area, and she was raising a lot of questions about 2020. And Jenna Griswold and the state prosecutors really went after her. Talk about the Tina Peters case to your understanding. Tina Peters to this day is locked up in jail, in prison, in Colorado because of Jenna Griswold and her prosecution.
Right. Well, it's actually, she's really a whistleblower because she didn't just raise some questions. They were going to come in and basically update her server. So she serves the people, or she served the citizens, the Colorado citizens of Mesa County. Her job is to protect their votes and make sure they are accurately and fairly counted. So, the state comes in and says, hey, we're going to update your system just days after the election. And she took a server image. She had her IT department take an image of the server, which is just a precautionary measure, standard practice in information technology, just in case something goes wrong. Because everybody knows when you update your IT system, something always goes wrong. It never works. It's the great promise of like perfect technology, right? So she takes this server image and then they come down hard on her. And then she's suspicious. So then she gathers some other data because she was basically becoming a whistleblower and demonstrating that the Colorado state officials were trying to avoid being accurate
Yep.
and legal compliant and transparent regarding those 2020 returns. And yeah, what did they do? Just like Letitia James, just like the New York people, they went on the warpath against a gold star mom, a whistleblower, and an upstanding patriotic citizen doing her duty and serving her constituents, and they threw her in prison. And we are going to get her out of prison. Our lawsuit is the first step in demonstrating in court that these officials are the ones who are at fault here. They are the ones subverting the law. They are the ones subverting the voting rights of Colorado citizens. And Tina Peters, every day she's in that prison, every day she's in that jail cell is a travesty, a stain on our history, and we're getting her out of prison. It's wrong.
Marley Hornick is my guest again at uniteforfreedom.com. Marley, I want to have you back on. We'll talk deeper dive into the Tina Peters, your efforts to get her out of jail. Somebody's posted up. We have it posted up about once a week. Somebody will say free Tina Peters. And there's a lot of folks that say that would be a good thing. So Marley, let's get back on here and let's figure out if my listeners and viewers, whether the podcast, the streamcast, the live cast, wherever they listen, thousands of ear holes hear this every day. We want to make sure that they know what they can do to help out Tina Peters and bring election integrity back across America. Uniteforfreedom.com, uniteforfreedom.com. Marley, I appreciate it. We'll get you back on here real soon. We'll talk more about Tina Peters, free Tina Peters, uniteforfreedom.com.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Appreciate it, Marley. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time. It's that special time of the day every week where we welcome in our aviation and travel expert. It's Mr. Jay Ratliff waiting patiently in the green room with us. Jay Ratliff, good morning, sir. How are you?
Pleasant good morning. Doing well today. Thank you.
Well, top of the morning to you, sir. Good to have you here. I have to, I had this wonderful flight. I think I got to tell you about it last week. There was a 12-hour flight to Dallas, and I still haven't recovered. I'm still having PTSD from that thing. Rerouting off the thing. It was a long flight. The computer crashed in the cockpit. We had to get off the flight. Then we didn't have enough fuel to circulate around the DFW airport during a storm, so we had to go to Oklahoma City. It was about a 12-hour flight from Denver to Dallas. Should be an hour and 24 minutes, but as you said last week, they're going to brag they got me there.
And did they use the term crash on the computer? Typically in aviation, we tend to not use that word if we can help it. But, I'm just glad that you got there safely, my friend. And, when you look at how many thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of flights that operate in the course of a given day, you have mechanical issues on a lot of those departures. And you want the airlines to do what they need to do, and that is to make sure that everything's working properly and to get you to your destination. And if there's a slight or significant delay, that's just something that we put up with as we go.
Yeah. They did not use the word crash. They hooked it up. When they switched the power on to get ready to back off, that's when the computer did not start back up, is what he said.
Yeah, we typically say the computer's not cooperating, and we've got to fix it.
Yeah.
But the C word, we tend to leave that one alone.
We don't use the C word.
No.
Crash by that. All right. Now, I was frustrated. This was a United Airlines flight, and a lot of these things happen, and I'm glad I got there safely, et cetera. It all worked out, but that was a long day of flying. Passenger, though, not so kind as me, got upset with a United Airlines gate agent and took matters into his own hands, or should we say his own fist? Tell me this story.
Yeah, his own fist. And yes, my friend, alcohol was involved. This was a delayed flight out of Washington's, I think, Dulles Airport. And the flight's running late. He gets to the gate. He's throwing a fit. He is so upset. I'll show you. I'm going to tear my boarding pass into shreds. I'm not flying, so that's what he does. A few minutes later, he says, I really do want to fly. Goes back to the counter, gets his boarding pass reprinted. But the captain overhears a lot of this stuff that's ongoing and walks out and says, he pulls him off to the side, "You're not flying on this flight. I'm not, we'll put you on another flight. We'll take care of you." And I've had to have those discussions, and it's a lot of times how you word it. But the bottom line was that the guy goes nuts and decides to go over and then, pound the gate agent, knocking him unconscious. So he gets arrested away he goes, could face a $250,000 fine, 10 years in prison, et cetera, et cetera. He won't. He'll get fined by the FAA. I think he's been ordered to pay under a plea deal $15,000 to the agent that he hit. And he will be banned, rightfully so, from flying United Airlines. But the problem, and you and I have talked about this so many times, is that he will be perfectly allowed, okay, to fly on any other carrier. He can fly on a American, a Delta, Southwest, any of these other airlines. He can just skip on down the counter and fly, even though he's been proven to be a threat to fellow passengers and employees. He will be allowed to fly. So I really wish that the airlines would get off their rear ends here and just get to the point where they're saying, look, we've got to make sure that these people are not allowed to fly on other carriers and expose other passengers and employees to risk. And they're not doing it because it costs money. But believe me, employees and passengers are their number one priority. Just ask them.
I've got a buddy who works for one of the big airlines. He's, a matter of fact, usually out of Denver, but they have him up at Chicago O'Hare for a couple of months training.
Well, that narrows it down.
Yeah, so he's up there working, and he's told me many stories in which, as a customer service agent or supervisor that he is in the airline world, he's told about the times he's got slapped or hit or pushed. Oh, yeah. It's not uncommon for this to happen.
It's not, and anytime you encounter a situation where you have to tell someone that they can't fly, now, it may be their behavior. It could be their stench if they've not taken a bath in like 3 months. It could be the fact that they appear to be under the influence of something, drugs or alcohol. It's how you handle it. And I've had to have that unfortunate conversation many times. And a lot of times, if you pull them away from the center stage, just get them off to the side. All I would tell individuals is, look, given the state that you're in right now, in other words, it's your fault. Given the state that you're in, I'm not going to allow you to fly on this flight. Now, I will give you several other options. We will get you to your destination. We will take good care of you, but you're alarming too many people on this flight in the gate area. And as a result, I'm not going to put you on this airplane. So, and there were times that people would try to get physical. A lot of times they would just, start screaming at you louder. And we'd have the police show up, and a lot of times they'd go after the police, which was, okay, stupid, but they'd do it anyways. A lot of these individuals, you don't know why they're flying. And I would tell the agents I worked with all the time that this could be the worst day of their life, and they're trying to forget it. And now you're telling them they can't get to where they need to be. And it's creating a problem that, unfortunately, you're the only person they can vent to, and they're going to. And it's tough. But, that just comes with the territory. I was the kind of guy that would volunteer to do that when it had to happen. I'm like, I'll take care of it. And then when I got into management, it fell on me so I could try to protect the agents, because I would tell people, look, if you want to yell at somebody, yell at me. Those people have your entire trip in their hands, and they're the last people on the planet you want to get ticked off. So yell and scream at me, do whatever you want, but please, they're on your side, and they're doing everything that they can, because obviously it's not their fault that there's weather involved. It's not their fault if it's a mechanical delay, blah, blah, blah. And you just try to give them a few minutes of not talking to calm down without ever using those two words, because you talk about something that'll ignite people. I've seen people in those situations say, you just need to calm down and just stand back, brother, because that's when they take off.
That's not gonna work out. That's no. That's like telling your wife why don't you calm down? That's that bad.
Oh yeah. Not that you can take my word for it, but I've seen it in play, and it can be. Yeah, it can be ugly.
It can be ugly. There's a crash report that has come out. I had to read the story when you sent it to me, the Air India crash. I'm like, okay, which crash was that? We seem to have had so many crashes and near misses lately. The initial Air India crash report is out, and I think it might raise more questions than it answers.
You're exactly right, and spot on once again, because we knew that they had a dual engine failure. We just didn't know what caused it. Was it a bird strike, fuel ingestion, or fuel contamination, et cetera? And the initial report finally came out. Normally we get it within a week or so, the black boxes, but this was several weeks. And in the report, it indicated that the pilots had actually turned off the fuel flow to the engines. It's a switch for each engine, the right and left, and they were turned off right after takeoff. And the question was, how did that happen? You can't bump them. They're spring loaded. You have to, with some effort, grab the tip, pull it up, bring it up over the top of a kind of a center spot, and then let it go back into place. So it's not something you accidentally hit. It was deliberate, unintentional or intentional. We don't know, because that's intent. But, the thing is, we now are finding out that it appears to have been the captain that did that. Now, when you cut off the fuel right at the point of rotation, right as you're coming off the ground, within a matter of seconds, those engines are going to lose the fuel that's being supplied, and they're going to start to shut down. And that's exactly what happened. And apparently the first officer, who was the pilot in command at the time of the aircraft, was taking off, and you can hear that rum, rum, just the hum of those engines. And when the fuel is cut, they start to spool down. And you can feel and hear that loss of thrust, if you will, from the power of those engines. And about seconds later, the one pilot asked the other, "Why did you do that?" And the other pilot said, "I did not." And it was 10 seconds after they were turned off that they were turned back on, reinstating the fuel flow to the engines. The problem was, at the altitude they were at, they simply did not have enough time to make it work. And they got one engine barely going. The other one was starting to, but on a flight that lasts less than 60 minutes, you don't have the altitude to work the problem. And sadly, what ended up taking place here is you saw the crash take place, and all those lives except one that were lost, 19 on the ground. And it was just a sad situation. But if it was a situation where it was a deliberate act or unintentional, we don't have the means to determine that. In any crash you and I've talked about, you want to honor the lives of those that were lost by making sure you do everything you can to find out what happened and prevent it. Right. So when you start dealing with possible mental health issues, which this may or may not have been, we'll have to wait and see. So, because there's no way those switches automatically get, moved without somebody doing it. So again, and as you stated, more questions than answers right now.
260 lives lost in that crash that happened, I believe, back in June, the Air India crash in India. It's tragic, and I'm understanding that this pilot had, again, speculation as to what happened on that day, but he had previously taken time off work seeking help for some mental health issues he was having. So there was a history of some issues, from what I'm understanding.
There has been, and it may have been a loss of a mother. It might have been a year or two before, something along those lines. So one of the things that you look at in a situation like this is, obviously, was there any recent triggers or anything that might have happened? But really, what he had told his friends is, my dad's health is failing, and I'm only going to be flying a couple of more flights before I can be with him full time. So it sounded as though he was making plans to care for an ailing father. So it certainly didn't sound like a red flag of somebody who's about to either do harm to themselves or others. So, and sadly, one of the natural byproducts of this entire investigation is when it ends in a year and they come out with a final report, if it suggests these types of things where it was something that was created by the pilot intentionally or what have you, these individuals that are screaming for no pilots on the flight deck, more automation, blah, 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 they will want it to move in that direction, because the vast majority of crashes that I've had to talk about over the last 33 years, pilot error was a contributing cause, maybe not the cause, but one of the contributing causes of most of the crashes. So there's people that said, Jay, if we could get rid of pilots, make it a fully autonomous aircraft where it operates on its own, given the technology we have, and implement more, artificial intelligence, et cetera, then all of a sudden now we would make commercial aviation safer. And I understand there's an argument to be made there, but I also understand I would not get on that plane. I want somebody on there with a vested interest in landing that bad boy in case there's something going wrong.
All right, two more questions. I want to get the hub delays where we're at across the country, but Delta's trying something new with technology. Everybody's trying out the AI, artificial intelligence, and Delta is no exception, sir.
They are. In fact, Delta, most airlines use what we call a static pricing model, where it's inventory controlled, where they have so many seats and they're going to sell 9% of them at this really, really cheap price, and then 12% at a slightly higher price, and so on and so forth. But Delta, over the last couple of years, have been working with an artificial intelligence software package, if you will, that's designed to be based on what we are willing to pay as a customer. Now, Delta is saying that this is great because it's great for the customer. This is the same airline that said, Yeah, we were guilty of, if you're traveling by yourself, charging you 70% more than if it was a couple. So I don't know that they clearly have my best interest at heart, even though Delta is my preferred carrier of choice. So what they're looking at is your past travel history, your tendencies, what you paid for past travel. Artificial intelligence is bringing all this in to see what you might pay for a ticket. And then that fare is going to be based on your individual past tendencies to some degree. So I don't like it, and it's scary. And right now, Delta's looking maybe by the end of this year to have 20% of their pricing package generated by this artificial intelligence program. And that simply means other airlines who would love to follow the lead of Delta will be looking at doing the same. And I do not see this as something that's good for consumers, but we'll have to wait and see.
What's it like to travel about the country today, Mr. Ratliff?
Boston gave us headaches this morning. Later today, we're going to have these pop-up aggravating, they're everywhere type thunderstorms, which will slow things down. I don't think to any huge degree, but it does mean we're going to have a great deal of turbulence that's going to be in the area. So if you're going to be traveling today, do everything you can to protect yourself by keeping yourself secured in the seat. But overall, it should be a pretty decent day to fly.
Jay Ratliff, if you come to our golf event, you're going to see at least 6 holes sponsored by Jay Ratliff.
We're working on that to make it more, my friend. That's for sure.
You got it, my friend. JayRatliff.com, daytradefund.com. Also, you can find his website. Jay, appreciate you hopping on here this morning. JayRatliff.com and RATLIFF or daytradefund.com. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, if I may, that we're looking for 30 people that would, and we started this, I think Friday we started this, Thursday we started this, and we're looking for 30 people that will give $175. This will build our classrooms finish out our classroom for a 5th grade class in Rwanda at Legacy Christian Academy. If you've been thinking about it, would you take action today? And I can't tell you enough about the plight of these children. These are not like 5th graders in your neighborhood that are out riding their bikes around. These are 5th graders that probably right now, many of them, I'm not being hyperbolic, many of them would probably not be alive because of sickness, disease, hunger. They would not have lived this long. It's not unusual before we got to this area for a child to die from something very simple or even starve to death, and the immune system crashes all sort of at the age of 3, 4, 5 years old. I mean, it was not unusual. Childhood mortality was a very real thing before we got there. So this is a serious program that we're doing there at Legacy Christian Academy. Failure is not an option. Kicking kids out of 5th grade is not an option. It has to succeed because, again, these are children that if they do survive and they have no hope of the ladder to climb out of the pit of poverty, they end up, if they don't have that, they end up, young ladies begin at 10, 11, 12, 9, 13 years, you pick the range, they end up figuring out that prostitution is a way that they can feed themselves and or feed their family. Boys go to lives of petty crime, roaming the streets, doing just getting into all sorts of no good action when you have a young man, any boy, any culture that doesn't have direction or instruction and just has free time on their hands. We're really saving lives at our school. And I don't say that to pat myself on the back or our charity on the back. I'm saying that as a reality that what we're doing at Legacy Christian Academy is really changing the lives of children. We're talking about many of these are orphan kids. We added a child to the program last week, was on our website, that is being raised by a homeless widow. I mean, imagine that you're orphaned. You don't know where your parents are at. Something happened to them, and somebody's going to take care of you. And who takes care of you? The widow. Well, that's very nice of the widow. Well, the widow's got nothing. She's homeless. So you go from being orphaned, and now you're homeless, but at least you have an adult to take care of you. But that widow can't afford to send that child to school. And so we take that child, put him in school, and help the widow out. And we feed that child 2 meals a day because the widow can't provide for the food there anyway, but she's just graciously caring for a child. These are the stories that happen all the time at our school. And I could tell you story after story about every child there. And we need your help. Our 5th grade class, the room is there. We have to put desk in there. If you have not helped us, if you can't help us, even if you can't do the 175, I understand. But if you can do $10, $15, just save for the desk, and we'll try to match that up there and get that spot up there. So if you can help us, we need 30 people that will have these fifth graders in a desk next year at Legacy Christian Academy. And again, you're literally not just keeping these kids in the classroom, helping them have the ladder they need to climb from the pit of extreme poverty, but you are also, my friends, you're saving them from a life of a lot of tragedy, a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of things that you would not want your fifth grader to do. Imagine if your grandchild or your child at the age of fifth grade and thinking that we don't have a desk for them to sit in. Imagine that if the only time that your fifth grader was going to get to eat was because they go to school because you're too poor to feed them at home. You want that kid in school. You don't want your fifth grade young lady to become a prostitute. You just don't want that. And so I'm just painting the picture that we're not just building desks. We literally, and I don't say this to be silly, we're literally saving lives. We're changing the course of a child's destiny. And that would be the life that all these kids at our school would be on at Legacy Christian Academy if we weren't building the school. So when you sponsor a child at Rivers Promise, that's the life you're changing. That's the background of these children. These are not kids that just said, well, let's just sponsor them. No, these are kids that have a story. We've told the story of Jean Dedu, who's in our school now. He actually witnessed his mother murder his father. We've talked about Stephen, who was on the verge of death with hepatitis, and some every child in that school has a story, and we want desks. I need 30 people that will donate $175. That's going to build the desk and chair for that fifth grade class. Every year we add a new grade level. Fifth grade starts in a couple of weeks, but we got to get these desks built now. We got to get them built ASAP because, again, they are custom built for that classroom because there's no Desk R Us or Deskorama store that we can go to. We have to have these built. And we also have to get the supplies in. And, we've got the marker boards, the chalkboards in there, but just all the things that kids need in a classroom that they can't bring. So that's 175 times 30. And that's what we need to launch this fifth grade class. And if you can help us today, I would appreciate it. It's not just buying a desk. It sounds very transactional, but I mean this not to pull your heartstrings, but to tell you the kids sitting in that desk that you're going to buy is literally their life has been saved because they get to sit in that desk. And we'd appreciate you helping us out today. $175, a one-time gift. And go to our website, riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. Some of you can do more than one. Some of you can do half of one. Whatever you can do, whatever you feel led to do, motivated to do it. But just know that there's going to be somebody sitting at that desk that literally they have the hope for a brighter future. They have the ladder. The learning to read, write, and do arithmetic is very just to learn to read and write is an amazing thing. So you're putting a kid in that desk, giving them a desk to sit in while they have the ladder to climb from the pit of poverty. Riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com. Go to our website, make that donation. 30 people, 175. You do the math, 60 people, and half that. You get the idea. However many, whatever way we get there, however we slice it or dice it, if you can just do $10, do $10. Riverspromise.org. It goes to the desk. We need 30 desks, and we need them ASAP. Today would be a great day if you can participate. Another great day to talk to and talk about Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com. Listen, there's a lot of realtors. If you're like me, you go to your mailbox and you get flyers and brochures. Everybody's trying to hawk and secure their business. And you go, well, that looks like a great flyer, but I don't know that person. Listen, take my word for it. When you call Sherry Cree, homeswithsherry.com, you're talking to one of the best you're ever going to find, because it's not just the skill. It's not just the talent. It's not just the ability to price and the ability to negotiate and navigate all the market flows and ups and flows in real estate. It's also someone that is approaching it with a mindset that they want to not just be a one-time transactional realtor for you. They want to be your realtor for life. They want, when your kids go off and get a starter home, starter condo, maybe you want to get them buy a home that could be a rental property later on in the area where they go to college. Whatever you do in real estate, Sherry wants to be the person that you have in that conversation, and she wants to become your ally and your partner in that, just to help you navigate the world of real estate. And listen, I've talked about this before. If you're in an area, let's say you're not in the I-25 corridor in Denver up to Fort Collins, and you're not in the metro areas of the Denver-Fort Collins area, there's an area that she may feel you may be, somebody else may be better. She has has a referral program. You need to reach out to Sherry. Again, she goes into it not just with the expertise, not just with the skills, the negotiating skills, the ninja skills that she has. She goes into it with the fact that she wants to become your realtor for life. And that's the paradigm. Every act that she does is an act of service to help you. And she believes that real estate can create generational wealth for you and your family. And she wants to be a part of that every step of the way. And she works to do that every step of the way. You owe it to yourself and your family, and probably your bank account also, to call Sherry Cree, have a conversation. If you're thinking about buying, selling, ready now or later, whatever the case may be, maybe it's a year from now, homeswithsherry.com. Call her today. Start the conversation, homeswithsherry.com. And don't forget, when you buy or sell with her, she takes a portion of her commission and she will donate a portion of that to the charity of your choice. And that's just the kind of generosity that she approaches things with. She discounts some of her fees and commissions for real estate for first responders and veterans. That's the kind of person Sherry is. Homeswithsherry.com. 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 Make sure you tell her that you heard about her on the Lakey program. We had to find some photos of Sherry a year and a half ago, I guess 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when she went to Africa with us. She was at the school for the ribbon cutting of our Legacy Christian Academy Phase 1 building. And I'll have to find those photos, and maybe we'll post those up tomorrow. Homeswithsherry.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to play the meme roulette. We steal memes from around the globe. And I pull out my little trusty prop here. It's a talk show host with props. Don't forget, after the show's done, go follow us on all the podcast platforms. Like us, share us there, follow us there. We're on the Apple Podcast, the Podbean, the Spotify, the iHeart. You get, if you want to just hear the audio of it. Of course, some of you are watching for the beauty that you see before your eyes on this camera. And my blue shirts. It's a blue shirt, dang it. So, by the way, some of your responses are very interesting on the question of the day. Would you, 43% of Americans said for $1 million they'd leave their partner. Stacy says, I would not leave my spouse for $1 million. I turned down a guy's marriage proposal with more money. The question is going to cause a divorce today. A great man is worth more than $1 million, says Stacy. Ray says this on the YouTube channel. He's, Jimmy, when your wife is going off, the worst thing to say is you need to upgrade your broom to a vacuum cleaner. Stop acting like a witch. Yeah, Ray, that's not an advisable task. I would not use that line of. I would, I'm single, so I don't know, but I'm thinking that's a bad idea. That's what I'm thinking. I think it's a very, very, very bad idea to use that language. Probably it may be accurate, but I wouldn't say it. Some things you don't say. Stacy says we're going to cause a divorce in her home by bringing up this topic. Listen, it's the answer that would bring up the divorce. The question itself is innocuous. It's harmless. But your answers could be really, are you part of the 43% would leave your spouse for $1 million? I saw earlier Jeff posted, $1 million doesn't go as far as it used to. Now you get up to 2 to 3, 4 million. Jeff's like, I'm out. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I'm just speculating. Yeah. Is there a price? Ladies and gentlemen, let's play meme roulette before we cause more divorces and marital spats here today. Round and round the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows, ladies and gentlemen. Illegal. This is the population sign. Welcome to California, population 12. Babylon Bee headline, illegal immigrants removed from the census, leaving California with a population of 12. That is pretty accurate right there. Illegal immigrants removed from the census, and now you have a population of 12 in California. Yeah, going to lose a few congressional seats out there, aren't you? Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Oh, look at that photo. General Foods International Coffees. Anybody remember the orange cappuccino, the Swiss mocha, the little coffee that came in those little tins? Read the caption. There was a brief time when this was the height of sophistication. You drink that coffee with your pinky in the air, baby. You know it was. If you had the Grey Poupon and that cappuccino right there, that Swiss mocha, that Cafe Vienne, yeah, you were high rolling, baby. If you had the Grey Poupon and that General Foods International coffee, Daddy got a pay raise, is what happened. You knew that Mama spending Daddy's money. Daddy got a pay raise. Round and around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from. No one knows. Let's do it. If a cow doesn't produce milk, is it a milk dud or an utter failure? Ladies and gentlemen, play on words. That's a dad joke. Producer Patel puts that up there, also known as producer Chad. If a cow doesn't, is that a cow? That would look more like a water buffalo. Like maybe there's a cow. I don't know. I'm no agriculturist. I'm no agronomist. I'm not one of those people. I'm not a farmer. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. I'm going to Milk Dud, by the way. Next meme. If you've never worn one of these shirts, you're not old enough to give me advice. And if you're listening to the audio portion of the program, it's from an Instagram page called Totally Awesome 80s. And it's a Panama Jack suntan product shirt. There's old Panama Jack there. And if you've never worn a Panama Jack shirt, you're not old enough to give me advice. What were the other shirts? You had Panama Jack. Anybody remember the OP shirts, Ocean Pacific? Those were hot shirts. Yeah, those are very hot shirts. Yeah, if you haven't worn one of those, don't give me advice. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Oh, there you go. Oh, it's old Kamala and Hillary. It's Hillary. And it's a caption of Hillary and Kamala together. And the caption of the photo says, President Trump already saved America twice. Ladies and gentlemen, if there's ever a reason that President Trump should be on Mount Rushmore, is that he himself saved us from those two people ever being in the Oval Office as the president. Thank God for Donald J. Trump. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. We're right out there. In the middle of the, we're in the Pacific, aren't we? Okay. Expert marriage tip. When your wife asks what's on TV, don't say dust. Follow me for more marriage tips. That's true. And again, when she's nagging you, don't say, hey, you need to get a vacuum and get off that broom. You're being a witch. That's a bad move as well. And again, hey, what's on the TV? A lot of dust, woman. Bad idea. Don't do that, you sexist. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Oh, this is true, and I hate to pardon the delicate ears out there. Nothing is scarier than attempting the first fart after you've had diarrhea. Producer Patel put that up there. It's not my fault. Nothing is trust but verify. Be a good instance. Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. We use the word fart and diarrhea in the show today. That's the first. Please be patient with me. I'm from the 1900s. Anybody else out there from the 1900s? Proud Gen Xer. I am from the 1900s. What was it like back in the 2010s, Daddy? The 2010s. That wasn't that long ago. I remember I told producer Chad I had a teacher at a parent-teacher conference. One time you have those parent-teacher conferences, meet the teacher nights. And she was talking about getting the kids to do homework. And she said, I just hated it when my parents took my cell phone away. And I'm like, well, hello, Muffy. You had a cell phone? How young are you? We still had landlines and passed notes in the hallway when I was in school. And old Muffy, Mrs. Muffy, I think was her name, she had a cell phone. I hated when my parents took my cell phone away. Vera says, great show today. Thank you. It's been worth every minute. Vera, it's worth what you paid for. It's even worth double that. You should pay twice. RK says, we're getting compliments left and right, Producer Patel. It's like you're making butter chicken again. By the way, this is a blue shirt. Stop the crap there. Does this shirt look blue to you? Round around the globe we go. Where we steal the memes from, no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, we have milked the meme machine dry. And now that we've gotten a couple of compliments, Jim says, guess shirts. It's a blue shirt. I don't know what we're guessing on a shirt, but Guess shirts. Oh, Guess. That was the brand of shirts. Yeah, Guess. Remember Guess? What are the jeans were called Cavaricis? We had to do 80s brands one day. Anybody remember they had the Jordache jeans? You had Jordache for boys and girls. The girls exclusively had the Gloria Vanderbilt, but if you were a cool guy, you could wear Calvin Klein jeans and the Jordache jeans. And then you had the Izod by Lacoste shirt. And then the polo, and our joke in middle school or high school was, you know why a polo shirt is so expensive? The man on the horse, because he's wearing an Izod shirt, the alligator shirt. Now it's called Lacoste, I think is what it's called. OP shirts, Guess shirts, OP, yeah, the OPs, and the Panama Jack, brands of the 80s. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to wrap up this program. I mean this sincerely. I want to ask you again, would you contemplate and consider $175? I can't tell you the kids that you're going to bless. You say, these kids love going to school, man. They hear that they get a chance to go to school. It's the highlight of their life. They're not like American kids that say, I don't want to go to school today. I'm going to fake my temperature. Man, we have very little absenteeism at our school because when they come to our school, they get to eat, they get love, they get to learn about Jesus, they learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic. Help us out. 5th grade classroom is counting on you. $175. Tomorrow's Friday. We're going to tally it up and see how close we are to our goal. I need 30 people to give $175. If you're listening later in the day and you're listening on the podcast, listen, pony up, my friends, pony up. $175 a donation one time. riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Jimmy Lakey. I've been unleashed from the confines of corporate radio. And here we are together, Lakey Unleashed. God bless you. God bless America. Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm